Obey Jesus, saving Bitcoin. Jeremy Hayne. Okay, everybody. My mom used to do international wires. And I just want to go through what Google says and how international wires work, and then get her testimony about it, and then compare it to Bitcoin. So according to Google, I put an international wire transfer. It says an international wire transfer is an electronic transfer of funds from one bank account to another, facilitating payments between individuals or businesses in different countries. It's a banking service offered by most banks, using systems like SWIFT to send money securely across borders. How it works. You initiate the transfer through your bank, either online through a mobile app or in person. You provide the recipient's name, address, bank name, bank code, whether it's SWIFT or BIC, account number, and country. If it's SWIFT network, your bank uses the SWIFT network to communicate with the recipient's bank, ensuring a secure transaction of information. If sending money in a different currency, your bank will convert the funds at their foreign exchange rate. Completion. Once the transfer is initiated, the funds are typically credited to the recipient's account within 1 to 5 business days. And if you make a request on a Friday, when do you get their money?
They're saying it takes 1 to 5 days?
Yeah.
It used to only take 24 to 48 hours.
Well, it could be one day. 1 to 5 days is a big range. How long do you think it would take to get it?
If it was on a Fridays are normally big wire days, but if it was a Friday, then you'd pick up an extra day the next week. Because not every bank's dealt with Fridays as a transfer day. So you would pick up another day to have that sent.
Scoot in. So it'll be done by what, Tuesday, Wednesday?
I would say Thursday. The following Thursday.
The next Thursday?
Yeah.
From Friday?
If it was on a Friday that it was transmitted.
Now, if one of us is a Tuesday?
Then it would probably be done by Wednesday, Thursday.
The next day or 2 days later?
That Thursday of that week, 2 days later. All depends on the day they send it.
So people ask, what's the use case of Bitcoin? You can argue store of value all day, but to me, the number one use of Bitcoin is not using an international wire transfer. So let me ask you some questions, Mom. Let's say I'm sending money to my brother who's visiting Paris. It's a Friday. I send him $500, so hopefully he'll get, I don't know, 400, 380 in euros. Describe that process for me. Do I have to go to the bank?
No.
I could do it on my phone?
Not if it's an international wire. If it's a domestic bank wire, then you go in person, do it up with the tellers.
Okay.
We only dealt with international.
So I could do it on my phone? Or a PC?
Are you asking me now time or when I was doing them 20 years ago?
No, right now.
I don't know what
it is now. Well then 20 years ago.
Okay, so at the time I was doing it, 2000 to 2001, that's when the bank I worked for was pretty full force then, and it was they did New England wires, so it was, you had Mid-Atlantic and you had New England, okay? Mid-Atlantic was all your back east, northeast states, all your states, and New England were only New England wires. So Massachusetts, Vermont, Connecticut, New England, whatever was a New England.
So let's say I still lived in Pennsylvania.
We did it a little different.
So let's say I lived in Pennsylvania. How would it go? It's like he sends me a text, let's say, if they even had texting back then, at 12 p.m. at my lunch break. Try to get permission to leave work and do a wire before end of business day. When do wires cut off?
Well, okay, so that's a 2-step process. Everything's a process. Remember that. Nothing's instantly in a bank. I don't care what anybody says. Nothing is. So everything's got a process. So he's in Paris, and you're in Pennsylvania,
yeah,
and you want him to get it by.
He lets me know 12 p.m. that he
Okay.
needs some money for
And
the
he needs
weekend.
this ASAP as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you're in Pennsylvania. So if it were me sending that wire, you would call me and say, I'm going to send this. Well, actually, no, because we dealt with own companies. We didn't deal with individuals. You would have to go to the bank and then have the bank contact us. And
In
then we would do it.
2001, 2002,
Yes.
could you go on to bank.com, whatever?
No.
So I
No.
have to, so okay. So
No.
just to understand the world from which
We were stagecoach to your metro.
Yeah. So just to understand the world from which Bitcoin sprang. This is the world. Without Bitcoin, understand this. Without Bitcoin, my brother needs money in Paris. I'm in Pennsylvania. He calls me, whatever, sends fucking carrier pigeon. I get the note 12. I gotta go to the bank to send him 500 bucks American, hoping he gets 380
because
euro.
you're an individual.
Yeah.
If you had a company, because I remember we dealt.
Well, let's just deal with me as an individual.
Okay.
Because I want people to understand how much Bitcoin.
Bank opens 8 in the morning.
How much Bitcoin has helped them. What time do they stop sending wires?
5.
Friday. Okay.
Actually, no, 4. Because they have to have time to do all their
I figured there would be
office.
at least an hour short.
You have to do your ledgers. You have to do your general ledgers. You have to.
So I got to get off of work at 3.
You have to appease Bank of New York
to get in there by and get it done by 4. Now, isn't it true that all international wires at some point run through the Bank of New York?
Everything
from America.
The Bank of America. Everything.
The Bank of New York.
Bank of New York.
Mellon
Everything
Bank
does.
of New York.
Even other countries.
Even other countries.
Yes, everything ends
everything
up back.
ends
Everything.
Bank of New York.
Everything starts out in the morning with B of A. Everything comes back to B of A. Bank of New York.
All right, so I get the thing at 12. I get permission to leave at 3, so I can get to the bank.
Excuse me, not Bank of. I said B of A.
I corrected it. It's Bank of New York Mellon.
Yeah.
All the middle names are important.
Go ahead.
So I get there. I do my little permission slip. I say, I need to send 500 bucks.
Your first fee.
What was that you were telling me about the PIN number? How does that work?
Oh, okay. You have an individual PIN number that when you start up with doing wires, whether it's domestic, state to state, or international out of the country, you're given a PIN number. Okay, it could be any set of numbers. Okay, it's kind of a registration.
Just me
number.
As a regular old.
Yeah. Again,
checking savings account person.
Yes. Again, remember, I did companies. I didn't do people, but it was the same precedence. If you went up to the teller, the domestic teller to the bank, my bank, you went in and you said, I'd like to send a wire. And they're going to say, is it domestic or is it international? Is it going out? And you'll say it's going out.
Now, what information does my brother have to provide me to send this out?
You need to know actually, they'll provide you because they'll contact us and say, we got somebody up at the that's how it happened. We got somebody, because I had a few of those. Lydia, we have somebody here. They want to send a wire. I said, well, is it an individual or a company? An individual. I said, I don't deal with individuals.
All right, well, let's focus on
so just say if it's an individual, then they have to do the wire at the front.
Okay, but what information do I need from Jeff to send him the money?
The contact, name, address, where it's going.
Does he need a PIN to receive or just send?
Let me see. Let me try to remember. No, you need it at both ends because you have to prove who you are.
What if either one of us?
Or I think they did also back it up with, if you didn't have it, I think if it was a domestic, they accepted your license.
Okay.
But if it was an international, you had to have it.
Really?
Well, how are they going to go across state country lines?
Yeah, to send and receive.
Yeah, they're not going to drive over there.
Okay. So let's say I have all the crap I need on me. I remember my PIN, even though it's the first time I ever used it.
Okay.
Right? Well, do they have the wherewithal to look up the PIN at the...
No, they're not going to provide you with the PIN. If you don't give the PIN, you don't get the wire.
And the recipient.
End of it.
So the recipient has to do the same thing with the PIN.
Yeah, got to know it. Now this is
the recipient in Europe has to know by hand all his account information, blah, blah, blah.
Well, everything will be in the wire.
Okay.
Remember, it was done through
So he
transmittal
doesn't have
fax.
to tell me that. The bank will know that.
The bank will know it because.
But he needs to know his account number and his PIN number.
ABA number and the bank information. Yes.
Okay, so that's just to kick it off.
Well, you're forgetting one major thing.
What?
Are you gonna have money to send that wire?
Yeah.
Because the fees are coming in now.
Okay,
Remember?
well that's what I'm about to ask you. So
okay.
How now do I fill out my crap? I got all this stuff somehow memorized. What are the fees like?
$10 for one going
Remember,
out.
I'm just trying to send $500, so my brother hopefully gets $380, $400 euro in 2001.
$10 for the domestic wire part of it because you got a double wire. You have a domestic that's going out and an international that's going into another country.
Okay.
So they're receiving. So you're going to pay $10 right then. This is 20 or some years ago. $10 fee for your domestic part of it. Okay, you just coming up to the front saying I'd like to do a wire. That's $10. That's how much it was then. I don't know what it is now. And then so now we know that it's France, so there's going to be definitely at least one correspondent bank, at least one. It's going to be right. So you're going to pay for their coming and receiving their wire.
So my $10 is getting charged me by my bank sending it.
Yes.
Okay.
And now you're going to pay $25 because it's a international wire.
Okay, international fee.
Yeah. So you're going to pay $10 to go out.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey's over there. Their bank's going to charge what they charge.
Okay.
But also, your bank's going to charge you too. So you're going to get hit twice up at the front desk.
So I'm at $35 just to send $500 right now.
Just to go out of the bank.
Does he get charged a fee for receiving?
Yes. There's a fee at that end because they got to make money.
His is the 25.
His is going to be 25 and 10.
So I'm at 35 and he's at 35.
At least. If there's only one correspondent bank. If there's more than one correspondent bank, then you're going to pay twice. Once for it to go out, once to go in, once to go out, once to come in. Just think of it like that. You know how the subways work. You're going through the turnstile. If you don't pay that, what happens?
Yeah.
The cop's going to come get you.
So I send $500, $35 in fees, for him to receive at $35 in fees.
If it's only one correspondent
bank.
How
do you know, how do they determine whether it's just one correspondent bank?
Because when they do the SWIFT is what they're talking about.
Yeah, you're using SWIFT.
It's going to let you know what it is. They
dollars.
Find it for you. That's the one break we got. We didn't have to go looking. Only sometimes we had a look. But most of the time, the software program would pick up the closest bank in that area. And that's where it would go.
So right here, to send 30...
So Jeff would have to know where that bank is.
And whether I'm sending $500 or $100...
Doesn't matter the amount.
I'm paying $70
It doesn't matter
in
the
fees. amount. Or today, you could send $1 billion in Bitcoin. This is on the blockchain for maybe $1.44 in fees.
I call that progression in life.
Yeah. So, let's go back to this. What if I were to send my brother $2 million in an international wire? At what point do they throw on a fee because it's over a certain amount of money?
It depends. Well, for an individual, I can't answer.
All right, so now that's just international. Let's do business.
Yeah.
My brother is doing a deal.
He has a company.
He has a company. I have a company.
Yes.
He moved to Paris.
Yes.
He's doing great. He's swanky.
Yeah.
I want to send him $2 million because he makes something and I'm going to buy it and distribute it here. We both are businessmen.
Right.
$2 million. What's it cost me?
Well, it depends again on what bank it's going to. Everything depends on the correspondent bank. Okay. So if it's 1 or 5 or 10 or whatever the amount of correspondent banks, there's going to be a fee. A fee to every bank. A fee to every bank.
Okay.
And that's how we were told to know it.
What is it?
So always. The bank I worked for was always 10 for domestic, 25 for international.
That's the same.
Always going out.
At what point do you get an extra fee because it's a certain amount of money?
If it capped at about 10 million, you might have to pay an extra fee.
Well, what would that be?
Maybe 25.
$25.
Yeah.
So it's not a percentage.
No.
Okay. I used to think international wires over a certain amount was a percentage of the amount. No. Okay.
And matter of fact, doing wires in those days were the easiest ways to do it.
Now, does he pay that $25 too?
He pays really any bank that money coming in.
So another 25 from me if it's over 10 million, and another 25 from me.
Remember, money going out, money coming in.
So $120 in fees if you're sending an international wire business over $10 million. Or with Bitcoin, it's still just going to be whatever the miners
Face
charge
value.
me.
So there you go. Bitcoin has better face value than the international wire.
So now let's talk about time frame.
Okay.
If I get it there by 4 on a Friday, as an individual, me to him, he gets it Thursday?
I can't get, we never made guarantees because it's a usual process, timing wise, is 24 to 48 hours. We tell all the clients the same, 24 to 48 hours. This is when it will leave our bank. It faxes out, goes to Bank of New York. We don't know when they're going to send it.
So the word wire, it goes back to olden days of telephone wires.
Yes.
Before there
Think
was
of telephone poles.
Before there was even faxes. So every wire actually was by your point, 2001, a fax.
Yes,
so
everything was faxed.
So there's a fax per wire.
And called in too. We got called in, but they were faxed out.
You called it in and faxed it out.
We have 24-hour faxes come in, 24 hours faxes go out.
So everything's
7 days
fax.
a week. Yes.
Okay.
And a call.
So the
international.
Think of the international wire department as an international fax department.
Yes.
And a phone call for corroboration.
Well, no, you could do the wire by phone, but the fax goes out.
Yeah.
The wire goes out.
So when the banks are talking to each other, all faxes.
In conversation on the phone, you tell me the amount. I take all your information. Verify, confirm. First step, PIN. You have the PIN, whatever the code, you give it to me. I recognize who you are. You'll come up on my screen. Swift. If it's new, because remember, I only did international wire. I can't speak for
But for you as a worker at a bank to get that money to the bank,
I had to have a PIN. Yes. And so you call, you say, Lydia, I'd like to do this wire. Okay, sure. What is your PIN? I don't have it. I said, well, I can't help you. I'm sorry. Do you know they told you that you had to have that PIN? Yeah. Not to school you, to remind you, because that helps you remember.
So now you got to remember.
Then all of a sudden you'll say, oh, crap, I have it written down.
That's from Swift.
Yeah.
The PIN.
Yeah. And then you go and you get it and you say, oh, here it is. I said, okay, now put it in, boom, boom, boom. There you are, coming up on my screen. Everything about you.
That's so funny.
Except your blood. And then you'll say, oh, I say, where do you want to send it this time? You say, it has to go to Africa. I'm like, okay. And you'll say, oh, how many
So
banks?
They're claiming a 24 to 4 hour time
24 hours to 48 hours minimum.
Now, I just found this
International.
I just found this out at lunch. Do wires ever get lost?
Yes. Human
Explain
error.
the process.
Human error.
Explain the process.
Anything in a bank could be
Listen
human
to
error,
this.
or any company
Listen
could be
to
human
this.
error. So what happens is, in my case, it was, say, ABC company, okay? A very nice lady. It was a seafood company she had, okay? So she'd call me routinely once a week to send out 10 was usually her amount that she would send. So she'd say, Lydia, I'd like to send it out. I said, okay, hey, all right, I'll take all your information, starting with the PIN, verify, confirm. Even as friendly as you are with people, you still have to do your protocol. So we get through all that, and she says, yeah, I'd like to have it sent 10 million. I said, okay. And then I put in the information, and the correspondent bank comes up and tells me where it's going to go. I'll tell you there's about 2. Would you still like to do the wire? Because you're in your head.
It all depends on the countries involved.
It all depends
how
on
many correspondent banks.
And Swift tells you that.
And everybody who touches it in some way gets paid.
Yes. So if you're calling me and you say, I'd like to, send that out, as soon as you can. I said, I know. I understand I hopefully it gets there soon, she says, but she knows it's 24 to 48 hours. But anyways, so then that never happened. So that week came, and I got a call from her, and she said, Lydia, I don't know what happened. I know you did the wire. You do them for me every time, and there's never an error. But the person I sent it to said they never received it. I said, oh, okay. Can you hold on? And then I roller skate down to the 2 people who do investigation of wires, okay? And I tell them what happened. quick scenario. And they tell me, roller skate back and tell her we're getting on it. I said, okay. And they said, but Lydia, if you want to do your extra mile like you always like to do, because she is a good customer of yours and you want to keep her, then you can also tell her you're going to start tracking it too. I said, okay, so do your thing, we'll do our thing. They couldn't come up with anything. So it fell in my lap on the third day. The first day, it was a Friday actually. It's funny you ask because it was a Friday. So that Monday, okay, comes around, Tuesday comes around and lands in my lap. Okay, they have too many investigations. Lydia, we have to put it in your lap. I said, okay, fine. So now it's up to me to track it.
How many days did this whole thing take?
So it started out on a Friday, and that day was a Tuesday. So Friday, a work day, Monday, work day, Tuesday, work day, by the end of the Tuesday. So it was like kind of like your third day. And then by the end of Friday, I found out where it was. So I went from that Friday to the following Friday when we found out where it was and what happened. So it was in the fourth correspondent bank in the fourth country who had a human error. And we don't get told what happened. We just get told it was human error. And if anybody has a company or anything, dealing with companies, they all sort of say the same thing, They just wanted the purpose done, so they want to get that high profile client, okay, happy. So anyways, so then what I did was I contacted Bank of New York first and find out they have it. They don't have it. So then I went on to research it to where it was. Called each correspondent bank. They don't have it. They don't have it. The fourth bank had it. And then they told me that it was a problem with the fax. Something happened with it. I don't know if it did get logged in or whatever it was, but human error. And that's why all corporates say human error.
What was the total days?
So total days from that Friday initiated it to the following Friday. So a Friday plus Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So 6 days. So in the meantime, my client calls me.
6 business days.
6 business days. Now, in the meantime, my client calls me and says, Lydia, I know that it didn't go right. I know something happened. I know it wasn't your fault, but I do need to get a wire out. They need to receive this money for my product. I said, okay, so you want to do another wire? She said, yes. I said, you realize it's more the same fees and everything? She said, yeah. I said, okay. She said, I'm not happy with that, though. I said, can you hold on? As soon as the client of mine says they're not happy, I put them on hold. And then I go down to the investigator wire people and I say, call the supervisor now and tell him my client's not happy. There was a human error on a wire. Her person never received it. I don't think she should be paying these extra fees. See if we can get permission because she's not happy. She's willing to do the wire. She called me to do the wire, but she's not happy with that. And I don't blame her. And then they did that. They reached out to the supervisor who was in another city of our state of Pennsylvania. He said, yes, tell her one time only. How many wires does she do it, Lydia? She's a routine customer once a week, 10 million. Okay, yes, this time only.
Can you hand me something?
And then, they let that happen. I was able to get on the phone and I was able to tell my client, you're not going to have to pay these fees. They'll be waived. And she was very happy.
You heard all that, right?
Okay, so then that went out and it was 10 million. And then that wire went right away. There was no hiccups. Same for corresponding banks, not counting ours, the one going out. So all total 5 banks. And so she was happy with that. And she got transmittal saying confirmation that the person did get the 10 million the second time. And then, of course, people listening, it's like money in the air. Okay, so it wasn't lost. It was just not sort of transmitted. Okay, so she did always have that money. It was just never sent from the fourth correspondent bank to the destination.
Okay.
So she did get that back.
So.
And she didn't have to pay the normal fees because of the mishap.
Okay, so you can do all that, which was the technology of 2001.
Yeah.
Or you could use Bitcoin, right? You go to send, right? The recepting person goes to receive. You touch phones, and you send a little test, right? Because if you're going to send $500, you want to make sure you don't just send $500. Who knows? You send a test of $1. Zip it. If it's Lightning Network, it's done in seconds. If it's Bitcoin, it takes 30 minutes. to send the rest of it, you just make sure it's confirmed that they get it, and you do it again, and it's done. 30 minutes each one. If you're one of those people that are crazy and you never send a test for Bitcoin, that is crazy. You do it one time, and it's final settlement at most 30 minutes.
So, what is your answer to it?
Bitcoin, you could watch this video and see all of that. Oh, and the cost, Lightning transactions, a few cents. Regular Bitcoin, maybe $1, $2. Sometimes the network does get busy. The most I think I've ever spent is $8 on the fee, and I paid a lot to get it through. And it's, the longest I've ever waited is probably an hour, probably for the same transaction because it was just loaded one day and I did it.
So basically, it's
what
go
Bitcoin
with whatever
has done,
is in the times, whatever's within the times.
No. This is what all of you have to understand. This Bitcoin forced the banks to change.
Oh, that's different,
right? Without Bitcoin, they never would have. They would have. Now they might even let you sell that $500, right, with no fee, but never without Bitcoin having existed first to start robbing them of their domestic wire and international wire fees. Bitcoin changed banking for all of you who don't ever use Bitcoin. If you've ever sent a wire, if you ever sent somebody money through Zelle, Bitcoin did that for you. Because if Bitcoin didn't force their hand, they never would have started giving to you for free when they could have charged you $25 for a domestic wire or $70 for an international wire for the same $500. Bitcoin changed their whole thing, and then they had to invent Zelle. But just look what you had to go through until a better technology came out.
Well, it's like a stagecoach.
So hold on. So like people are like Bitcoin's big technology use case is store of value. How about sending money around the world cheaper, easier, with finality, and there aren't any people involved? Just make sure you get your public address right. Make sure you're in control of your private, key. That's important. And yeah, that you can mess that up, but aside from that, it's so much better. And an offshoot of improvement to the world, people that have never used Bitcoin have benefited from Bitcoin because Bitcoin took so many fees from them, they had to give you something like a Zelle. So you could move money under a certain amount for free. And Bitcoin has no cap. You can send billions of dollars. There's every week or so there's a billion or a billion more or multiple $billion, and it's for the same amount of a $10 Bitcoin transaction. It's just about miner fees, and it's for pennies to $1, a couple dollars.
But didn't you say banks now are in connection with Bitcoin?
No, the Federal Reserve and the comptroller says banks can now do they can experiment reasonably with Bitcoin, including hold it.
What would you explain what that means though?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
What they're saying, what they did was lift all of the fake, stringent, what's the word? So the Biden administration put harsh penalties and barriers up for banks to use crypto. And the new Trump administration is saying, forget about that. Reasonable stuff that people are already doing, you can do. You don't need prior permission. You don't need all the little hoops that they threw up for no reason. They didn't pass laws against it. They just made it hard from a regulatory and an execution standpoint.
Now, is this crypto, can it do as such as in wires, it could be a personal domestic wire or a company with a New England wire. Is that the same thing is there a limitation on that, or is the process going to be the same thing?
Yeah.
Is it just all individual?
It's just these squares.
So companies can do the same thing individuals could do.
Yeah.
No, that's progress.
Yeah.
And from my standpoint, yeah, I do have crypto too. So, and because I have that past experience on the job, for back in the beginning of 2000, 2001 on it.
It's just these little squares.
Yeah.
These little QR codes.
This is much easier.
It could be an individual, it could be a person.
But I want to say that was a good job that I had, and I was very proud of it. Helped me with my house, so there's that. But the process, yes.
Yeah, I get it. It employed
seems
people.
Seems to be a lot quicker with Bitcoin.
It employed people to execute it and to troubleshoot it.
Yes.
But, I mean, what's better technology?
Yeah.
Bitcoin. What's the number one use case of Bitcoin? Fine, maybe store of value. How about sending money? Mm-hmm. Cheaper, better, more efficient.
Let me ask you a question now. Do you think at all that this is a way of banks replacing people?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they did that when they
took away. Well, no, Bitcoin's a way of replacing banks.
Yeah, because that's...
and all their employees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they started streamlining...
A better system of money, can replace banks. I don't want it to replace the dollar, but it will replace weaker currencies. Well,
because when we were doing wires, it was a pretty good experience, right? Overall. And eventually they got faded out because we were let go and everything downsized all across Mid-Atlantic and New England. So many thousands and thousands of people out. But anyways, what they were doing was implementing new systems, as the oil companies do, especially banks, where they can let go of more people, right? So they were able to do that by adapting a new system of being able to do a New England wire on a phone or by computer on your own. That was one reason why so many people were let go, including me. Because when during our times, you had to have us in the chair doing it. We had to do all the verification and everything, making sure everything was good.
Because these apps now do the verification. Well, no, the Bitcoin blockchain does the verification, but these apps make it easier to do the transaction, to scan each other's QR code.
And you feel confident yourself doing it this way?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's new to me, guys, what he's talking about.
I've been using Bitcoin off and on since 13.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's not new to me, but his process he's talking about is new
to me. The cell phone app, it gets better and better. There's different ones, but now with Lightning, it's practically free.
So what's your message for today, then, about all
just how much Bitcoin has improved the world.
Yeah.
And it's going to keep on improving it. And those of you who don't want anything to do with Bitcoin, that's a mistake. But your life has been improved if you've never used Bitcoin. If you've ever used Zelle, your life has been improved because of Bitcoin. Because they never would have gave you free wires when they used to charge you. And there was no other way to get it done.
And leave a comment, people, please. If you could leave a comment just to say... You understand what we're talking about. You know about what we're talking about. You experienced something with a wire, domestic or New England. I mean, domestic or international. Yourself as a company or as an individual. Just leave a comment and let us know what it is. And also, for all of you who do have crypto, leave a comment and saying, hey, you know what? We get you. This is easier. We like this with Bitcoin. You know what I mean? So please, just let us know.
Yeah, it's crazy. The free money the banks would just take from us is just insane.
Remember, from working in many banks and many financial institutions over the years, banks never lose money.
I made this shirt in 2011. What does it say? The Federal Reserve is a private bank. Foreign tycoons own it, you, and me. This was before Bitcoin. This was before I knew about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the answer to the people who want to end the Fed. There's clearly no appetite in government to end the Fed, but you can end the Fed in your own private life just by using Bitcoin instead of their mechanisms, instead of the dollar. And the dollar is a Federal Reserve debt note. We don't have our own money. It's Federal Reserve money. It's bullshit. But you can opt out with Bitcoin, and it's an easier life.
And if any of you remember, my timestamp on this was 2000, 2001. So that was the era when I was doing wires. So back then, we had the euro that not all countries came aboard to do. So they wanted to use their own currency. So that's why we had foreign currency departments. But even as a wire operator, we had to know the minimal, which was how to come up with the dollar or the currency for that customer who just doesn't want to go over to the euro.
But you still have to have the whole department, because whether it's the drachma or the Reichsmark, if it's just the euro, you still are doing another currency than the dollar.
Yeah.
So even if you wrap them all up in the euro, you're still getting the fees. You still have the department. You're still doing all the
footwork
tasks to send it done. Or you could just QR code.
Yeah.
To QR code.
So it's up to you guys. Seeing if you watch this video, thank you. And if you have any understanding or experience on either side of it or both, wires and or Bitcoin, please let us know if you agree, you don't agree, or whatever it is. But yeah.
Bitcoin's way better. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Obey Jesus, saving Bitcoin. Jeremy Hain.